Today we are going to start with the exercise 8.3 in trigonometry topic. Before going to the exercise part, I want you to revise the formulas which I have given in my previous video. Kindly check into my previous video for full concepts of trigonometry. So let us begin with the concept of identity, trigonometric identities. So we have three trigonometric identities. So what is meant by identity? Identity means you will end up with the value of 1. So first one is sine square theta plus cos square theta is 1. Second identity is secant square theta minus tan square theta is equal to 1. Third identity is cosecant square theta minus cot square theta is equal to 1. So you can just keep the sine square theta as it is and send this cos square here, so that 1 minus cos square theta. So sine square is 1 minus cos square theta and cos square is 1 minus sine square theta. So you can get these two formulas from the identity. Likewise, in the second identity, you can take secant square theta as 1 plus tan square theta and tan square theta as secant square theta minus 1. By third identity, you can get cosecant square as 1 plus cot square and cot square as cosecant square minus 1. So also remember the inverse ratios. Sine and cosecant are reciprocal, right? So sine is equal to 1 by cosecant, cosecant equal to 1 by sine. So sine and cosecant are inverse, okay, inverse ratios. Cos and secant are inverse ratios. So cos is 1 by secant, secant is 1 by cos. Tan is 1 by cot, cot is 1 by tan. So I want you to remember everything before starting the exercise part. Just pause the video and remember the inverse ratios and trigonometric identities. And also if when the question tan theta is given, you have to replace tan as sine by cos. And if in question cot theta is given, cos by sine. Okay, so we are going to replace in many question with tan and cot as sine by cos for tan, cos by sine for cot theta. Okay. So let us begin with the exercise 8.3. Express the trigonometric ratio sin A, secant A and tan A in terms of cot A. Okay, so you have to write these three ratios in terms of cot A. So you have to change, like you have to substitute in terms of cot A in the place of sine. So do you know what is the inverse ratio of cot? Tan, right? Tan is equal to 1 by cot. So they ask you to find tan also. So you can just directly write tan theta is equal, tan A is equal to 1 by cot A. So the answer must be in the form of cot. Okay, that is the meaning of this question. So you have to write three ratios, sine, secant and tan in terms of cot. So tan is already the inverse of cot. So this is done. Okay, tan is equal to 1 by cot. Next, sine and secant is remaining, no? So you just think about the identity which has cot. I can say cosecant square minus cot square is 1, right? So from that identity, I'm taking cosecant square is equal to 1 plus cot square A. Why I'm taking cosecant square? Because I want sine. If I find the answers of cosecant in terms of cot, I can reciprocal it to get the sine value, right? So cosecant square is 1 plus cot square A, and I'm sending the square that side. So it becomes square root 1 plus root of 1 plus cot square A is cosecant A. And what is sine A? Inverse of cosecant, right? 1 by cosecant. So 1 divided by, what is the answer of cosecant? Root of 1 plus cot square A. Okay. So you can just substitute it from the cosecant A. So first we are taking cot A is the inverse of tan. So tan equal to 1 by cot A. And second, to find sine, I am taking the cosecant square is equal to 1 plus cot square identity and getting the cosecant value and substituting in the sine formula, inverse formula. Okay. And next you wanted to find secant, right? What is secant? From the secant square, I can get from the identity, no, secant square is equal to 1 plus tan square. Since we have changed tan as 1 by cot A, you can just substitute the tan value here to get the secant. So secant square is equal to 1 plus 1 by cot square. So just cross multiply it. You get cot square plus 1 by cot square and send the square root to numerator and denominator. Root of cot square plus 1 root of cot square. And you cannot cancel the numerator square root because it is, this square is only for cot, right? So if you wanted to cancel, you should have the bracket with whole square, right? So you cannot cancel the numerator square with square root, and in the denominator you can take this, right? Square and root will get cancelled. So root of cot square A plus 1 by cot A is the value of secant A. Okay, so you got it. So tan is the inverse of cot, so you are getting it. Sine is the inverse of cosecant. So from identity of cosecant, I am getting the value of cosecant, and I am taking the inverse ratio of sine, like inverse ratio of cosecant to get the sine value. And after that, for secant, I am taking the identity and substituting the tan value. So everything I have changed in terms of cot here. Okay, so second question is also same type. You have to try by yourself. I'll just explain the method. Write all the trigonometric ratios of angle A in terms of secant. So every ratio should be written in the form of secant, right? So first start with what is the inverse of secant? Cos, right? So cos is equal to 1 by secant. So I am getting directly the cost value, that is cos. I can just write it as 1 by secant in the form of secant, right? Cos is 1 by secant. To find the sine, I can get the identity sine square plus cos square is 1, right? And then I can just take sine square is equal to 1 minus cos square, and instead of cos square I can substitute 1 by secant A, the whole square, right? So everything you need to change in the form of secant. So I am first taking the cos is the inverse of secant, so and I am substituting the cos value in this identity to get the sine value in terms of secant. Now 1 by secant square, right? If you square it and just cross multiply it, secant square minus 1 by secant square. Take the square root inside for numerator and denominator. So root of secant square A minus 1 divided by secant A. Square and root will get cancelled for only for the denominator. Okay. So next, after you got the sine A, so we have got sine and cos, right? Cosecant will be 1 by sine. So you just take the reciprocal of the sine value. So secant by root of secant square A minus 1. And next you need to find tan square, right? You know the identity of secant square minus tan square is 1. To find the tan square, secant square A minus 1. What is secant? Like it is already in the form of secant square. So no need of changing it, right? So just send the square root that side. So tan A equal to root of secant square A minus 1. And you know cot is the inverse of tan. Just take 1 by tan A. Tan A value is 1 by root of secant square A minus 1. So if you wanted to change in terms of another ratio now, so you have to write all trigonometric ratio in terms of secant in this question. So first always take the inverse ratio of this. Cos is the inverse of secant. So using cos, find the sine using the identity, and afterwards sine is the inverse of cosecant, so I am taking the cosecant value from this, and afterwards secant square minus tan square is 1, so from that I am getting tan value, and inverse it, you get the cot value. Okay, so third Roman, 9 into secant square minus 9 into tan square equal to 1. So can you see 9 is the common here. So I'm taking 9 common out. You get the identity. So what is the value of identity? Secant square minus tan square is 1. So answer is 9. Option B. So second question. So this type of question, remember I'll give you the rules of this type of question. First step is to, like if they have given 1 plus tan plus secant, 1 plus cot minus cosecant, right? You know the inverse ratios, and tan theta can be written in the form of sine by cos, and cot theta can be written in the form of cos by sine, which I have given in the formula video, right? So here first step is to change every ratio in terms of sine and cos. Okay, so all ratios should be changed in terms of sine and cos. That is your first step. So 1 plus tan can be changed into sine by cos. And secant is the 1 by cos, inverse ratio of secant. And 1 plus cot is cos by sine. Cosecant is 1 by sine. So everything I'm changing in terms of cos and sine. Okay. So afterwards take an LCM. Cos is the LCM for this. Cos theta plus sine theta plus 1. And take the LCM for sine theta plus cos theta minus 1. So can you write it like this is like sine plus cos, right? I'm writing it in the same order. Sine plus cos plus 1, sine plus cos minus 1 divided by cos and sine. Okay. So always remember, when you do LCM, maybe you will end up with this. Can you check on the formula? Can you see this is sine plus cos, this is sine plus cos, and this is 1, this is 1. Can you check out the formulas of algebraic expression like a plus b into a minus b, which is equal to a square minus b square, no? A is sine plus cos, b is 1 here. Okay, so I can write like a plus b, a minus b is equal to a square minus b square. So always in trigonometry we are using this formula in many questions. Okay, so a plus b and a minus b will end up with, after you find out this LCM, no, most of the questions have like this, and change into a square minus b square formula, and you get the a plus b the whole square here, right? So just expand it. Sine square plus cos square plus 2ab is 2 sine theta cos theta minus 1. So can we say sine square plus cos square is 1? Plus 2 cos theta minus 1. Plus 1 minus 1 will get cancelled. You keep the denominator as it is, and sine theta cos theta will get cancelled. You get the answer of 2. So for this kind of question, you need to change. First step is to change every ratio in terms of sine and cos. Second step is to take an LCM. Third step, just check whether you got a square minus b square formula here. Okay, So if you get the formula, you just use it and expand it. Okay, you will get the answer. So next question is also same type. So secant is secant plus tan into 1 minus sin a. So secant you can written as, you can change into cos, right? 1 by cos. Tan is sin by cos. And this is already in the form of sin, so no need of change. So when it is already in the form of sin, don't change anything. So only the other ratios you have to change in terms of sin and cos. Okay. So here the denominator is common, no, cos a. So I am writing in the whole denominator cos a 1 plus sin a into 1 minus sin a. Can you see you already, like, you got a plus b, a minus b, a square minus b square. So this is 1 minus sin square, right? So from the identity I can write cos square is equal to 1 minus sin square. So you get cancelled. The answer is cos a, which is option D. So let's begin with the fourth question. 1 plus tan square a by 1 plus cot square a. Can you see it is the identity, right? You can just directly write using the identity. Secant square is 1 plus tan square. Cosecant square is 1 plus cot square. Okay. So then you change into cos and sin. Or else you can also change it like 1 plus sin square by cos square, 1 plus cos square by sin square. Take an LCM. You end up with the same answer. Okay. But I'm just skipping two steps and I'm making the easy calculation, easy way of solving. Okay. Just change it to identity. So secant square is 1 by cos square, cosecant square is 1 by sin square. So when you reciprocal the denominator, you get sin square by cos square, which is tan square a.